Bill, let me be honest. You were so sick that when I came to visit you at the hospital, I was making plans for what I was going to say at your funeral. You were very sick.
I'm Bill Walker.
I'm Judy Walker.
Great. So tell me your story.
We left on our 50th anniversary for a trip to Montana. And we done fine. The vacation's going good. And stayed there a week. And the last couple of days I started getting tired. But we was going to start home. We was going to stop at Yellowstone National Park on the way. Well, I got worse and tired and more tired. I thought I was getting a virus. We stopped and got some medicine. And then I got to the point I couldn't do anything. I just lay and freeze in the bed, and we started home. I started to drive. I remember that far. She said I only made it a few miles and was running off the road. It's her turn now, because I don't remember the rest of this trip.
Yeah, he got to the point where when I knew that he was freezing and I thought, well, he just had the flu. So we took off. He was driving, like he said, and when he started going off the road, I said, okay, pull over. I'm taking over. Now, I don't drive much. I drive around my area, and I don't do interstates. So we got to our first stop, and that night I started feeling bad. And I asked God, I said, I will take being sick at night, and I'll take what I have to in the morning. But give me a window to get us to the next stop. Got up the next day, helped him get dressed, got him in the car. I felt great.
So Judy, what was the experience like for you having to drive alone?
Well, you know, I can't even hardly remember it, tell you the truth. It was just like God took over. He guided us to our areas, what we needed to go. He actually helped us through all of this.
Yeah. You say you don't normally drive on the highways.
No, I don't.
Yeah. And it was quite a distance. It probably was 1,500 miles in 3 days. So, I mean, she done good. They said I talked to her and helped her direct her. Don't remember a thing.
We only got lost 3 times, but that wasn't too bad.
And so you drove with Legionnaires.
Yes, and I didn't know it at the time. Like I said, I thought we just had the flu. And so in ICU, they said that he was running a fever at that time, and which is normal, but this fever wouldn't go away. No matter what they did, they had him hooked up to so many things. All these numbers, everything on these machines and what have you, he wasn't responding, and this was concerning them. And I would say going into this, probably the second week, his pulmonary doctor would come in and he says, I just don't understand this. He said he should be responding by now. So they thought maybe he might have had some brain damage. So my daughter and I, we got up the next day and we went up there, and these doctors came in. And this infectious doctor says, Mrs. Walker says, you have a very, very, very sick husband. He has Legionnaires. But he says, you need to go see your doctor just in case to make sure you're okay. I did, and sure enough, I had Legionnaires also. But it was just by the grace of God that I didn't get it as bad. And now I realize later on why. So then...
Let me just ask that question then. And you said why. You understand why. So what is the
Well,
why?
Because at the end of it all, of course, I was there every day with him through the whole thing. And then afterwards, when he came home, there was a lot of rehab I had to help him with. And some of it got pretty bad. Yeah. But I couldn't have done it. Otherwise, I would have been in the same situation as him. So God blessed me there. Yeah. Every day, it was something else and something else. One day, it was, we were resting. They kind of turned the lights down so that, I could maybe get some rest or whatever. And I was sitting there with my daughter, and I just looked over at Bill, and so help me, there was Jesus standing right over him. And he was leaning over him, kind of like this, but you never could see his face. And his arm was up like this. And I said, my daughter, I says, Tina, do you see Jesus over there? Everything was real calm. And she says, no, Mom, I don't see him. I said, well, he's got brown hair down to here, straight, but not long hair. And he had like a light to medium brown garment, or like a robe. And the thing that kind of fascinated me was his sleeve was like this, but his hands and his arm was real long, and his fingers were so long, and I just couldn't get over how long his fingers were. He wasn't there very long, and then he left. But then finally his heart started going out. He couldn't handle it anymore. So they called the heart doctor up, and she says, we've got to zap it. And I said, well, how do they do that? I said, do they do it with the paddles or what? And she looked at me and she says, you watch too many movies. She says, no, we do it differently. So we left, and they zapped it, and it went right back in. 24 hours to the minute, it went out again. They called her back up, and they told us that we've got to do it again. But she says, we can't do it no more. And I said, well, what do you mean? I says, what if it goes out again? And they said, we can't do any more for him. I asked Jesus, I said, you've got him this for. Please don't take him now. Shortly after that, I was sitting in the room again, and for some reason my daughter wasn't there. Jesus appeared again, and he was standing over him doing the very same thing. And I kept watching, and by this time I was just had it. You know, I just felt like I was about ready to just give up. And I stood there, or sit there, and I watched him, and you couldn't tell what he was doing. And finally I thought, I sure wished he could just give me a hug. So I got up and I walked over. He was standing over, was on Bill's left side, and I just stood there. By then I didn't see him anymore. But I thought, oh, if I could just have it. So I just stood there and I pretend like he was giving me a hug, like he would do a child. But for some reason I just felt very at peace, because I needed the strength. And I got it, and I went back and sat down, and the room was just full of peace again. After that, they worked and worked, and they was just so confused. They said, I just don't understand why he isn't responding. So he was in an induced coma for 20 days, and toward that time, at the end, Jesus appeared again. He appeared 3 times. This time, he was over him longer, and you couldn't tell what he was doing, but you knew there was something going on. And then shortly after that, I don't know my days, but it had to be shortly after that, Bill's fever dropped. All these numbers went back to normal. He woke up, sat up, because his brain was so bad at that time. He didn't know what he was doing. And they were so excited. And so the next day he had to be transported to Seton. But they came out, and the girls, the nurses, and them came out and says, I want you to know that your husband was a miracle, and his story should go down in the medical history books.
I walked out of the hospital, I walked into rehab, and I said, I'll walk out of here. And I did on the 6th day. But she had to help me a lot after we got home. Without her, and we nicknamed her Nurse Judy. There was a Judge Judy, now we had Nurse Judy. So it was thankful that God got me through this, and with all the prayers from the church people and everybody across this country that we know.
Oh, they prayed for everywhere from Montana to
And
Louisiana.
one guy in Missouri we know real well anointed himself at church for me. So
His church did.
yeah, and we got prayers from everywhere, and I really appreciate
And
it.
especially my church family.
Yeah.
I can't thank them enough. It really, really was by the grace of God, truly by grace of God, that he is here today.
Yeah.
It really is. I give him all the glory and all the praise.
And God gave you this story that you're sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.